Alright everyone, there's an interesting link in the description, archived of course, that actually overlaps elements of sort of the global order that we're seeing now with Mussolini's variant of fascism actually, sort of the main definition of it. Of course, in fascism, a huge centrality exists, and what happens is that the state and the industrial apparatus are essentially one. That is, the state has direct control over the corporate apparatus. The corporate apparatus, meanwhile, exists in a very friendly atmosphere with a government that is not too concerned particularly with penalizing businesses so long as they stay in line. Now, I'll go a step further. So this article makes that connection. There's a further connection to make, which is this is essentially also the same model the Chinese use. That is that modern communism, we need to stop seeing communism as a local nationalistic style of thing, which is how it's presented. By the way, communists are more than happy to con white supremacists and stuff into thinking that they have something in common, which is why you get a bunch of confused Nazbols. What really it is, though, is an international communist conspiracy. Yes, when the boomers waxed hyperbolic about communists attempting to subvert the world to take it over, they weren't really wrong. At the time, back in the 50s, the 60s and stuff, technically they were wrong because there were competing civic entities. There was no globalism. Arguably, there was an element of it, proto-globalism, in the Western Hemisphere, but in the rest of the world. For instance, China invaded Vietnam several times. They sparred with the Russians over what real communism was. You get certainly Yugoslavia helping to create the non-aligned movement. You have a lot of intrigue in the rest of the world. After the fall of the Soviet Union, though, and the relaxing of cross-hemispheric tensions, what you get is full-on modern globalism. Under modern globalism, basically what the countries have done is come to the conclusion that it doesn't really matter what particular system you're using as long as you're using the particular system. Globalism is the idea that you can call yourself a communist country, a nationalistic country, or a liberal democracy, and you're all technically practicing elements of the same overall fiscal strategy. And along with that comes moralism. The problem is that you can't have a society in which you have that sort of particular setup without having moralism as well. It is automatic. The only difference is how diverse the interior of the country is, and of course if the country's not fully on board with all elements of global tyranny, all you have to do is the commies / fascists, they're the same thing really, can exploit those differences between people and get them fighting one another and try to overwhelm the system thereby. What you've got now, therefore, is a situation, especially over the last couple of years, it's become considerably more, where Western countries, supposedly capitalistic and democratic nations, resemble China. You see, you look out, for instance, in the U.S. or parts of Europe right now. You see people jostling to get rid of the freedom of movement, to get rid of the freedom of assembly. This is all based on COVID. It's being used for political purposes and social purposes beyond any actual medicine or science involved. The medical response is almost secondary at this point to the government, the civic response. You see people masking up, avoiding each other. You see people clamoring for censorship, especially online. You see the rudiments of what you could basically call a social credit score system. All of these things already present in China. Well, then have you converted into a communist nation? No, not technically. China uses the term communism to convey what it's doing. And in the sense that it is completely centralized, it is a communist state. Absolutely. You also have redistributionism, the equalization of the lower classes. Of course, the party loyal are massively wealthy. Inequality in China is more than it is in most of the Western countries. You won't hear this from the Jacobin. What happens, though, is you have elements of hyper-capitalism, but only for corporations that are literally incorporated old school Europe style, like literally corporations in the primordial sense of the term, like the East India Company or something, under license from either a crown or a government official or something, depending on the country. In China, of course, it's the latter. The party has basically told the business, because you are ideologically pure and because you agree with us and aren't going to rock the boat, you can exploit your workers all you want. Go ahead, fuck around, do whatever you want, beat people, rape people, destroy the environment, we don't care. And then, of course, puts up a facade of progress for the rest of the world to see, but it's just a facade. and progress will never happen. The Western countries of the world are engaging in the same thing. This is globalism. We need to understand that international communism simply changed form. What more intelligent communists realized is that the old way of stomping all over the concept of free movement or free expression and stuff, no, you can't do that very openly. You have to pretend that you live in a liberal society. Really, in every economic aspect, everything is hyper-centralized. What you then do is you get the state out of the game of censorship and get corporations in. The corporations you've monopolized, that partner directly with the government, that under any significant westernized legal system wouldn't be able to do so because it's a conflict of interests. Right now, in the United States, you have companies that are supposedly, they're US-based under US law and everything else, that are acting basically like countries in China do. They are doing the same things. Now, how can this be? Supposedly they exist in competing hemispheres with totally different systems. The systems have subverted one another. The West attempted to subvert Eastern-style totalitarianism. In the economic sense, they partially won. In the social sense, they got nowhere. What's unfortunately happened is that then there's feedback happening. The Eastern world used all of that extra money that it gained by adopting a facade of capitalism, technically hyper-capitalism, in a mixed model sort of economy, and used that to propagandize to the West. So our war is against fascism and communism. It's against globalism. It's the worst aspects of Mussolini and Chairman Mao mashed together. It's literally an international conspiracy. Just to be clear, the people that will say, they'll poo-poo that idea, they identify the billionaires are a threat. Oh, the billionaires this, the rich that. Oh, the government is comprised of a bunch of rich people. Can't you put two and two together? Do you think that they haven't learned how to work with the same rich, powerful people in other countries for mutual benefit? How do you think that they became rich? By being completely stupid? Or by having strategic sense at the very least? Once you realize the obvious nature of what's going on, you'll realize globalism is basically if Mussolini became world dictator and began to share power. Okay, co-consul with Chairman Mao. That's basically what it boils down to. That's about all. Peace out.